Stewart Stars. Tonight for our Chapter 9 reading, I wanted to invite a special guest, one of my sons, Cole. Say hi, Cole.
Hello.
We hope that at home you are reading with your loved ones and your family, so I'm going to read with one of my loved ones tonight. All right, Chapter 9, The Chocolate Touch. Oh, the shame of it, the humiliation, John wept breathlessly as he ran shocked and frightened, indignant and angry at the world that had suddenly turned against him. Mean old things, John thought, blaming Miss Plimsoll and Miss Quaver for his failures, even though nothing had happened to him had been their fault in any way. Horrible old school, he thought, even though he had liked school until that morning. Hateful Susan, he thought, even though he knew at the same time that he had really longing for her to be friendly with him again. Through the window, Miss Midas saw John coming up the pathway. "Hello, John dear," she called from the living room. "You're home early today. How nice. As a reward, there will be a piece of chocolate after supper." "I hate it," John shouted. He was crying too hard to say anything else for the moment. When she heard the sound of his voice, Miss Midas rushed to him into the hall. "Why, what's the matter, dear?" she asked, putting her arm around him. John twisted away from her grasp, ran past her, and started up the stairs towards his bedroom. "Susan doesn't want me at her birthday party," he said as he went. "I know she doesn't." "Well, I don't want to go to her rotten old party anyway." "I really don't think you mean that," Miss Midas said. "Besides," she added, and John halted by the softness of her voice, "Miss Buttercup just telephoned to say she was going to drive over herself at 4 o'clock to pick you up." "She did?" John said, blinking down at his mother from the top of the stairway. "Yes, she did," Miss Midas assured him. "So you'd better hurry up and get yourself washed and brushed. Your party clothes are laid out on your bed." There were games on the Buttercup's lawn, while it was still warm enough outside. Later, the party supper, including the birthday cake, was going to be served indoors, and there would be a magician and a short movie. John joined in Blind Man's Bluff and Grandmother's Footsteps and Fox and Geese, and he soon became more cheerful. He even temporarily forgot about chocolate. Susan looked very pretty. Her yellow curls had been brushed so hard they looked silkier than ever. She was wearing a big blue ribbon, the same color as her eyes. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, a deeper pink than her new party dress. On her feet were dainty little white socks and white shoes with straps that buttoned. Between games, Susan smiled at John and said, "I'm glad you came." They seemed to be on good terms again. Then Mr. Buttercup approached, bringing a bucket of water from the garage. He set it down in the middle of the lawn without spilling a single drop. "We're going to duck for apples," Susan whispered to John. "The boys against the girls. You could be captain of the boys' team." The two teams lined up for the race, Susan leading the girls and John the boys. "The idea is this," Mr. Buttercup explained. "When I say go—" "Not yet, John." "Susan and John will run to the bucket. There are 12 apples floating in the bucket and 12 people in the race. Using only their teeth, Susan and John will grab their apples and run back to their lines. As soon as they touch the hands of the number 2 runners in their teams, Dinny and Duncan, Susan and John will go to the end of their lines, and Dinny and Duncan will run to the bucket and duck for apples. Do you all understand the way it's going to work? All right. 1 to get ready, 2 to get set, get steady, and 3, 2, go." Susan bounded ahead like a jackrabbit and had her face deep in the bucket by the time John reached her side and crouched down for his apple. He got his eye on a big red one with its stalk jumping up conveniently for him to grab. He lowered his face, opened his mouth, and lunged. Somehow his nose reached the apple before his teeth did, and he pushed it below the surface of the water. John's mouth followed the apple down. Then a terrible thing happened. The clear water in the bucket turned into dark brown, sweet, liquid chocolate. Susan and John immediately pulled their heads up, but it was too late. Their faces were drenched with chocolate syrup. "Oh!" Susan exclaimed, wiping chocolate out of her eyes. Chocolate syrup dripped down all over her delicate, pale pink dress. Oh, she moaned. John was in the same state. There was chocolate all over his face. There was chocolate on his white front of his shirt and on his gray flannel shorts, and there was chocolate in his mouth. Ugh, John said, ugh. Susan was too surprised and angry to speak. For a second time that day, she turned her back on John and ran away from him. Miss Buttercup offered to clean John up, but he couldn't bear to stay at the party another minute. He started off at once for home. And that was chapter 9. Tune in for chapter 10. Thanks for reading with me, Cole.